both of those women, though, instilled in me the idea that you can be anything. I will say my mom tempered it, though, with a little realism to say you can be anything and everything, but maybe not all at the same time. There are times where you need to put something down and then pick it up later. And that is fully okay.
All right. You just got one of us today. It's Gianna here. And something that we've talked about on this podcast quite often, you've heard it, is imposter syndrome, and how we probably feel it throughout our lives in so many different areas, in our careers, in our relationships, or starting side hustles, or just starting into something new, as a lot of people have been doing. But then motherhood comes and just smacks you in the face. If you never had imposter syndrome before, you probably have it as a mom. And like, how am I doing this? What am I doing? Am I doing it right? I say probably once a week, like, I'm still 17 years old, who handed me these two children, who handed me this house, like all these responsibilities, all these things that I'm doing that are so cool. And I'm so blessed and so happy to have all of them. But I feel like I'm not big enough to do this. I'm not doing this right. I need to call my mom and know like what setting the stove goes on, which I don't think that ever goes away. But a big key in really just blossoming as a person, I think, is your confidence. So that's always been something that Casey and I have been interested in, and figuring out how to become so confident in yourself. And we have an awesome person here with us today. Illana Raia is the CEO of Être, which is a mentorship ecosystem. So it brings together all types of women and girls across the US to help build upon the confidence that they have within them. She's been named one of the first 250 entrepreneurs on the Forbes Next 1000 list, sits on the Forbes Business Council, and this brand Être was recognized twice by Fast Company's World Changing Ideas, which, if you don't know about Fast Company, it's amazing and really highlights some of the best of the best. So Illana, thank you so much for being here. You're going to leave us feeling like confident goddesses. I'm almost positive at the end of this.
I hope so. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. So I want to start off by saying that you are a mother yourself.
I am.
I
am. I have two kids. They're big. Yes.
Two kids, older, mid-20s. And when we were talking offline, you had mentioned that you're their consultant now. You went from being their manager and like directly involved in their day-to-day life to now they kind of call you every now and then to have you consult on some things, which I think is so funny because I feel like that's the relationship that I have with my mom as well. But tell me about like growing up, like when they were kids, what was your motherhood journey like the nitty gritty of it?
The nitty gritty of it was insane. It was insane. I was so not a consultant or a manager. I was like a cruise director and a circus director and spinning plates, and I don't know what you would call it. My husband traveled 5 days a week when the kids were small. I had stopped working for a little while. I was a lawyer before. And then I stayed out actually for 6 years when my kids were small because I had 2 in 2 years. And it was a full-on circus for everyone who's listening, everyone in your ecosystem. I remember exactly what that's like. And I wouldn't remember when I had showered and I was wearing clothes, some of which were mine and, some of which were my husband's. It was a zoo.
Yeah.
But really happy.
Coming from being a lawyer, was this like, what was your dream? Was your dream to climb the corporate ladder, or was your dream to be a mother, or were you trying to accomplish a little bit of both, which it seems like you did, but like, where were you thinking your direction was going to go?
My direction where I thought it was going to go wasn't actually where it went. And I say this all the time. In my head, I had a very linear path. You go to college, you go to law school, you go to a big law firm. I just did all of those things straight in a row. I was honestly 24 years old when I started working. And I just thought I wanted to work at that firm doing mergers and acquisitions forever. I loved it. I was so happy. And my husband and I grew up together. We got married. We had our daughter. I took one look at her and said, I think I need to do this right now. And two things happened all at once. I was incredibly lucky that I was able to do that. I had worked for a while beforehand. We were in a position where I could step out for a little bit. And I recognized how lucky I was. And then the second part was the firm, I think, knew I was going to come back. I didn't know it, but they knew me well enough to know that I was at the firm for a bunch of years. I came out for 6. I went back for another 10. They had never changed my phone extension. They had never changed my ID number. They just knew I was coming back. So I had a very, very understanding firm, which I think helped a lot. But I think I just took a look at her and wanted to do that as hands-on and full-time as I had been doing the law thing. And the type of law I was practicing, it was hard at that time to balance. I wish so desperately that all the tech that exists now had existed then. Because then I think I could have done both at once and felt like I was doing it well.
Yeah.
I'm going to date myself, but this was, the 90s. And when I started practicing, there wasn't email. We had faxes. There weren't cell phones. I mean, it was like old school.
Which I always say, I don't know how you guys got through college like that. I mean, like you guys deserve a different degree than we did because that's insanity in my mind, but I digress. Go ahead.
No, you're 100% right. And I kept telling my kids when they went off to college how insanely lucky they were and they heard me talking, but so my motherhood journey I was very hands-on when the kids were small. And then I basically built my career back to be the hours where the kids were in school. When they went back, 8 to 3, I was working that way. And then we would all come home and they would do their thing and I would do more work. And as they got further into school and more sports and more activities, I stayed later. And that continued all the way until everybody went to college. And so I was lucky in that respect. But the early years, the 2 under 2, everybody's a toddler at the same time. Yeah, that was as messy as everybody else knows it is.
How were you in that period of dealing with the mess? Like, did some of you think to yourself, like, excuse me, I was wearing power suits and commanding the room and like, just being a bad bitch. And now I'm covered in spit up and listening to a toddler yell at me. Like, did you have a hard time with your identity during that?
It's a great question. I missed people listening to me. I really did miss when I would say,
yeah,
right. I never had to go into the law firm and say, put your shoes on 800 times. And I really missed when you would ask for a piece of paper and someone would hand it to you. Yeah, that was lovely and no more. No, I think, you adjust your conversational skills, you adjust your negotiating tactics. There's a dotted line to be drawn from corporate law to raising toddlers. That's no joke. Everything's a negotiation. I think the thing that saved me is probably what saves all of us, which was my girlfriends. That community of other moms, the people going through it with you, your cousins, your sisters, the people you adopt as your family. That's everything.
Yeah.
And every time I talk about mentorship at a law firm, that might have been vertical mentorship. But what I had when I was a mom and raising my kids and in it day to day, that was parallel, horizontal mentorship, whatever you want to call it. And I don't know what I would have done without those girlfriends.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we're here trying to do, right? And, that's why we're so happy to have you here and being that girlfriend in the chat with us to help the audience understand like how they can work themselves up to that confidence today. So tell us then how you went from the law and the business operations to deciding, I'm going to try something different in the entrepreneurship.
It was so unexpected. I'm the most unlikely founder ever. I say it all the time. My daughter was in middle school and I was working and I overheard her talking to someone and I realized she had no idea at all what I did every day. Just no idea. And I thought to myself, all right, that's not great, but not unusual. It's corporate law. That's not easily accessible to a middle schooler. And then I started to realize that she didn't know what any of my friends did either. And all those girlfriends I was talking about, all of whom had amazing jobs.
Right.
I had friends who were founders and surgeons and news anchors and, hedge fund managers. And she would refer to them as, the person in your book club.
The bank
lady. The one we go to the zoo with.
Did she have dreams at this age? So this is middle school. She was like, 12, 13? Like, did she want to be Britney Spears when she grew up? Or did she want to be...
Even younger. I mean, she was, you're right, younger than that even. She wasn't discussing, what she wanted to be. She was and remains today, a very self-possessed, empowered person. And she came to us hardwired that way. She loved math. She loved science. She loved sports.
Oh God,
all
power
of that
to her. They're like all my Achilles heel. Like, try to have me do a math problem and I'll just give you whatever you want.
No, but if you asked her to write an essay, she wanted to pull her hair out. But anything with a formula, she was terrific. but she wasn't seeing women in those roles.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not anyone's fault. I just realized that in her world, her pediatrician was a man, her dentist was a man, just all of the people around her were men. And I thought, okay, this is bad and this is easy to fix.
Yeah.
Right. I just started taking her in middle school to lunch with my friends to see them in action at work. So let's go see what it's like to be a surgeon. Let's go see what it's like. These were 15-minute, eat our lunch in the car on the way there type of meetings. But my girlfriends loved it and would walk her around and sit her in the boardroom. And she loved it. And I swear to you, the minute I did it for the first time with her, I just thought every girl should be doing this.
Yeah.
Like, what about the girl that doesn't have that mom network of amazing friends? Why can't I take other people's daughters in to see this as well? And that sort of started the wheels turning. And in 2014, I retired from the firm. 2015, I started really thinking about it, sending cold emails out, reaching out to people with the idea. And in 2016, I built a website and launched it. And that's how fast it was.
I love that. You know, on the smallest level, our kids' preschool does something like that, where they send a form home with the parents at the beginning of the year and say, like, what's your career? What do you do? And is it something you'd be interested in coming in and doing a presentation for the preschoolers to learn about?
I love that.
Which I think is cool too, because it's not just like, oh, this big guy comes in to visit the preschool. It's like, oh, that's Johnny's mommy or daddy. Like, it makes it a little bit more realistic for it to be somebody like in their network as you were doing. So I think that makes total sense. So when you were doing this and you were starting to like encounter, was it for just girls or for boys and girls, and like what age groups were you doing?
So I started it for girls because the more I got into it during that year of 2015, I started to really sit down and get more into that space. I knew that I was new at something. And the data that I kept seeing was that there's a confidence drop that starts as early as the age of 8.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And so when people started to ask me, well, why aren't you doing this for boys? In the beginning, it was simply that the data was proving again and again that there was a confidence drop, and that if you could get girls before they quit their sport, before they stopped raising their hand, before they decided they didn't want the hard math class, and bolster that confidence a little bit, perhaps you could stop that confidence slide. We've since done our own research, which I'll definitely tell you about later, to see exactly what that looks like today and how mentors are really closing that confidence gap. But in the beginning, I was simply aware that there was data. I could see it with some of my daughter's friends. And I just thought, this is what she needs right now. This is where I see a need in the market. And I have a solution. I have this massive network of women, all of whom will open their doors at their companies or make a call at another company. And so that was really why I built it like that. Today, we start as early as age 10. Our youngest board member is 10. We have an advisory board that's all
board member
high school age girls.
Love that.
And then because we're 8 now, we're really growing with the girls. So girls who may have started with us in middle school might now be finishing high school, going to college, and we're now extending it into college so that girls who maybe came to Spotify with us when they were 12 are now reaching out to Spotify, to that same woman, saying, I'd love to talk about an internship.
Yeah.
Would you look at my resume? And that loop is closing for the first time ever, which is so cool.
I was going to say, what a cool full circle moment it's going to be when one of the girls who's gone through your program is going to be hosting the next cohort to come.
I cannot wait.
Oh, I just got chills.
Goosebumps.
That's so awesome. Yeah. So like going through it, I have a hypothesis. Actually, it's not a hypothesis. It's more of like like I could see this going two ways, and I'd love to know what your answer is in terms of like, where is what is the current state of confidence in girls? Because I think there are two ends of the spectrum here. One is COVID, which we saw that kids were basically just shut up in their homes for a year to 2 years during the most pivotal time of their lives. Like you said, when they start kind of receding from sports, they like start putting their hand down. They're maybe like a little worried about their body and the changes that they're going through. And they didn't have that social exposure to be around other girls to say, okay, this is normal, or we're going through it together. But then at the same time, all those kids that were shut up at home then took to TikTok or the talk, as Casey would say if she were here, and have started growing these incredible communities for themselves to say, like, hey, maybe I'm not connecting with the girls that are at my high school or my middle school, but I've got 30,000 other girls that follow me and they're finding community elsewhere, which comes with its own set of problems, obviously. And that's, time for another show. But so I'm super curious because I would be totally not surprised if you told me it's in the worst state it's ever been and it's in the best state it's ever been. So where do we think girls' confidence falls today?
Well, I'm going to tell you actually both of the prongs that you talked about are right. And while the news might not be good in terms of the current state of girls' confidence, the fix, the part of the solution is definitely there and accessible. And that's the good news.
Okay.
So this was our second national study. We did one in 2022 and we just did a new one in 24. Looking closely at the state of girls' confidence. And it was a big national survey, including none of the girls involved in Être, right? I see the confidence boom every time I bring girls into a boardroom. I see their hands go up. But we needed to know whether that was anecdotal and just because they're in this platform that we've created. So let's go out to the broader country and see. And what we saw was that between the ages of 13 and 18, girls' confidence drops by 20%. Between those same ages, the percentage of girls who say they feel smart drops by 50%.
Wow.
The percentage of girls who say they feel optimistic drops by 52%.
Wow.
So, and we looked at happiness, we looked at stress, anxiety, all of those numbers, stress and anxiety rise dramatically during those years. But the good news was that 91% of the girls, so 9 out of 10, said they think higher confidence is directly related to mentorship.
Interesting.
And then girls who sit with a mentor or girls who could imagine they had a mentor said, 89% of girls said they would be more confident making new friends if they had a mentor. 70% said they'd be less likely to quit their sport if they had a mentor. They are linking in their minds the idea of higher confidence, more strength, bravery, being emboldened to having a mentor.
Let me ask
so
something
this is the
different
connection,
here.
right?
I'm coming at this obviously from a motherhood perspective, and I don't know if you know this information, but what were the relationships like? Because I was kind of the same way. Like I had my mom and I had a great relationship with my mom, but like you just listen to somebody differently. Like you were saying earlier,
they're not counting the moms out. So for example, when they talk about where girls are learning the most in finance early on, more girls said they were learning about money from their mothers than their fathers.
Yeah.
So interestingly, moms are not at all out of this mentor loop. We're casting a very wide net when we talk about what a mentor is at this age, right? When you and I talk about a mentor at work, we think of someone who's generally senior to us professionally, who's either been assigned to us or we've reached out, but they clearly have expertise that we need within that professional sphere. For the younger set, for this next gen idea of a mentor, right? Or a mentor moment, this can just be someone who's an expert in that which they want to get better at, or something where they're curious about the industry. So girls who love music, when I bring them to Spotify and they get to stand on a stage or go in a recording studio, the women they meet at Spotify might not be their mentors for life, but they're having these mentor moments, and that will change how they feel about going into music, being brave enough to send an audition tape to somebody. It's those type of little confidence building moments. Yeah. The girl who walks into Google and says, "Oh, I hate raising my hand in class." And then an engineer looks at her and says, "Oh my God, honey, I remember exactly what that feels like. I felt the same way. And in fact, I had the same kind of sneakers you're wearing, but come meet my team. I'm an engineer at Google." That girl's going to raise her hand the next day. So these mentor moments, I think, are interesting. And the moms, the cool aunts, the neighbor down the street with that great job, all of that is within what we would define as a mentor. It's just incredibly important that we get to the girls early and listen to them and say, "What are you most interested in? Tell me your favorite subject."
You're providing the most incredible exposure to them, because that's what it is. And, Casey and I talk about it sometimes. She jokes on the pod and she's like, "Oh my God, you're such a good business person." She's like, "I'm the one in the back, like, and like Gianna's firing off emails all day long." And she's like, "I don't know how you how you know how to do that, or how, like, I would be so scared to death to write this email back to a brand or whoever that we're working with for the podcast." And I'm like, well, some of it is just, I've just been exposed in doing that. So now this is my 10th time doing that, as opposed to my first or my second. And it's just, okay, it's fine. But also it's been hearing some of the things like you just said. Like I remember I went to a podcast conference years ago and there was this guy who had like the number 3 podcast at the time on the Apple charts and sat up on stage and said, I am in the fetal position on the floor 10 minutes before every podcast, hoping that the person cancels. He's like, I can't get rid of it. Once I'm in the podcast, I'm flying high. I love it. But that anxiety before completely wrecks me. And that has lived with me my entire life. Like just being exposed to somebody else that was willing to share their deep, dark feelings like that. I was like, wait a second, other people feel like that? Or okay, like it's okay to get nervous about this, that, and the other thing. So, and then like you and I were talking offline before about like the exposure that I've had in the corporate world and kind of just like puffing your chest out while you're in a certain room or in a certain experience. And then being like, okay, taking the breath after and being like, oh my God, I can't believe I just did that. But like knowing that that's okay because that other people in these high positions are, I don't want to say fake it till you make it, but are like, maybe they don't feel as confident as they look 100% of the time. And that's
they're
okay.
willing to share that with girls. That's what I love so much. In the same way that the guy you saw on stage shared it with an audience, right? And how empowering and vulnerable of him to do that.
Yeah.
The women in these boardrooms, you get a panel of women at Morgan Stanley or at TikTok or at NBC to sit with girls and say, okay, it's your meeting, girls. We're here for you. What do you want to know? And girls will ask about, is this your dream job? Do you get scared in interviews? What's it like the first time you're on air? Do you feel like you are, included? Older girls are asking
humanizing.
About equal pay and all that kind of stuff. And the women are completely candid and open and generous with their time and their advice. And there's no way it's not changing them to some extent. My goal is to make sure that any girl can get into that room. Right? Être is free for every girl, for every school. I don't just want the girls with the mom network in the room. I want girls in every zip code if they've got an interest in that company. And that's why the girls vote on where we go. Like I don't pick where we go. I go track it down once they've voted. But we only go where they ask to go. Yeah. And then I just want to make sure that every girl can get in that room.
What do you think is something that mothers can do to help instill confidence in their daughters outside of like, I love the idea that you have, whether it is seeking out Être themselves or kind of starting like a mini Être among their own friend group? What is like something that they can start with inside of the home, whether you did it with your own daughters or it's something that you see within the girls in your cohorts?
Club Être chapters are insanely easy to do. I literally call them, it's a club in a box.
Oh, I love that.
You can pop them anywhere. I have sports teams that consider themselves Club Être chapters. I have schools. I have homeschooled girls. It really is just tell me what your girls are interested in. Is it space? Let's have them Zoom with an astronaut. Is it sports? Let's have them talk to a collegiate athlete who just got recruited at whatever level. So moms can get together in the same way they might put a book club together, put a Club Être chapter together, and just tell me who your girls are interested in meeting. And then let's do that together. That's one incredibly easy way. As they get older, girls can do TED Ed talks. I've got 40 girls doing TED Ed talks with us right now.
Yes.
Again, as young as 10. And they connect with a mentor who helps them in their short. These are 4 to 5 minute talks. They can be up to 9 to 13 minutes. But the point is from home. And we started during COVID, like you were talking about, looking for something where they could dive into it. Moms can sit with their daughters and say, watch these other girls do a TED Ed talk. She's your age. Doesn't have to be this year, maybe next year. Is there something you'd like to share like that? And then you were talking about social media, and it is really true. I do want to go back to that. There's plenty of discussion about the detriments and making sure that kids are safe and responsible on social. And I am all for that. But social media can also be a place where they find community and they find role models that are aligned with their interests. So maybe we don't want them in that toxic group chat that the 8th graders are in, and we want to steer that away. But what if she's really interested in writing her own music or getting her art seen at Pixar or sports or movies or whatever it is? There are women out there that she can follow, and moms can be looking over their shoulders. This is something you can do together.
That's interesting, right?
Because
like
it's
redirecting what they're looking at on social in a way to benefit them. Yeah.
And also, I think when we did our second book, which came out in 22, it was 180 women answering questions from girls. Girls were asking really specific questions to luminary women in different industries. We got to so many of the women, and they gave answers so easily on social. I can't tell you how many women answered the question over DM, where a mom would say, my daughter's 13. She is so interested in space. You work at NASA. Would you answer this one question? Or they sent me the question and I reached out. Social media can safely and carefully be a place where interests are deepened and expanded. And you meet your very first mentor moment and you find that role model. And that's a really great thing.
On like a very small scale of this, a girl that I went to high school with is a pilot. And she flies a G6 around the country. She works for a very private, wealthy man. And she posts her experience, and it's her in her uniform standing behind, with this jet behind her and all this stuff. And my daughter, my husband's very interested in aviation. So my daughter has been too. And she loves spotting the different planes in the sky. She wants to see the planes before we get on them. Like my husband will Google it and show it to her and that type of stuff. So she's been very interested in aviation. So I've done kind of what you said. And I'm like, hey, Sienna, look at this. Like, this is mommy's friend and she is a pilot. Like, maybe that's something that you can do one day. So where she started saying like, I don't want to be a plane pilot. I want to be a helicopter pilot. And I'm like, yes, girl, I would love to support that. But I think just this idea of the connection where like, I haven't seen or really like had a face-to-face conversation with this person other than DM for 20 plus years, So I would have never known what she was doing. But now through the power of social media, I can see that and I can show my daughter. And I think, again, this idea of exposure. I can't say that enough. And this is the thing to help foster confidence, that when you see it's real, when you see that it's achievable, when you see that somebody else who has total normal human emotions was able to accomplish the same thing, or that it even exists. I think it could be easy for some little girls to be like, well, no, like pilots are just men. I can't do that. When you see that it exists out there, or even just that mentorship exists, that's even a thing to say, I don't know necessarily what I want to do yet, but I know that once I figure it out, I could probably go find somebody and then ask them to help me. Like that's even and I don't think I knew that until very late in my career. I remember being in my career and somebody saying like, oh yeah, that person used to be a mentor to me. And I was like, what? Like, what? That's a thing that we can do?
It's true. And I think, the cool thing too, so take your daughter. If you DM'd the pilot a question from your daughter, and you said, this is my daughter, she's X age, she's fascinated by what you do. Here's a question from her. Would you answer it by DM? Right. 10 to 1, this pilot's going to do it. It's just, if a girl emailed you a question or DM'd you a question, you would answer it. It's such a light lift and it's so endlessly impactful. What's cool about that is by the time your daughter is in the workforce, the job she may have probably doesn't even exist right now.
Oh, I think about that all the time.
Generation are going to have, don't exist. But the confidence to raise your hand, to ask, to advocate for your own curiosity and get that answer, that will extend into whatever she happens to be flying then. If it's a car, if it's a ship, whatever she happens to be flying, she will remember that another pilot answered her question once. And that stays with you, I think, forever.
Let's transition a little bit from like the girls and children aspect of it, but to moms and the people that are listening, and just whether it be in motherhood or in your career, what are tips or just like tangible things that you can tell everybody about how to feel a little bit more confident in yourself, or ways that you can gain that? Again, whether it's get it for the first time or get it back, because motherhood really hits your ego a little bit. But like, what's helped you throughout the years?
It's a great question. Let's take it in a couple of stages. Let's say that you are looking to get back into the workforce, right? You were working, you've stepped out, and now you feel like you have left your confidence with your running shoes at the door. And how are we actually going to walk that walk again? Obviously, you're still the same person that you were before kids, before you pivoted, before everything changed. That person, your initial interests, all that curiosity, all that work ethic and drive, you are redirecting it elsewhere now, but you're exactly that person. So never fear for a second that has somehow dripped out of you and it's no longer there. you are that person, you're just all the more like you're richer for the experiences that you're having.
I agree. I was going to say, I think you're a better person.
Right, you are. And so
Yeah.
that now you're wrapping all of this new experience and perspective, which now you have acres of. And none of the people who have been mothers have that perspective and never will. That now makes you a better team player. It makes you a better leader, manager, CEO, founder, whatever the next thing is. You are going to be better at it because you can spin all those plates at once.
Yes.
Because your empathy has risen tenfold.
Yes.
Because you know how to care for yourself and other people, which makes you phenomenal on a team and the person everybody wants. So I wouldn't doubt the skills that you had before and all the skills you've added since. That's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is I would be so unafraid of that cold email or cold DM. When I first started Être, I launched a website. I took classes at General Assembly on 20th Street in New York to learn how to build a website. It was not at all the pretty website you see today. It was really unattractive, but it was the first one. But every day from the moment I published it, I sent a cold email to a woman I didn't know, but whose work I respected or who was somehow in the space that I was entering. And it was only a couple of lines long. This is who I am. This is what I just built. I would love your feedback, good or bad. And what I really wanted was the bad feedback.
So smart.
Right? I didn't need the good feedback. It was lovely to hear. But what I really wanted was, you're missing this. You've overlooked this.
Yeah.
You've overstated this. And I got tons of feedback. And I tell the story all the time. But Ariana Huffington wrote back within 6 weeks of us launching Être. And I had been to her Thrive conference. When you said you were at that conference and heard the gentleman speak, it made me think of this. I was at the Thrive conference and I wrote to her and said, that conference really impacted me. If you get a chance, would you take a look? And she wrote back and gave me feedback.
Wow.
And then gave me a column at HuffPost and a platform to write and a microphone to start speaking.
Amazing.
And she changed
from a cold email.
Changed from a cold email. And I'm not saying to everyone immediately go email this person. That is not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying within the space where you want to be, whether it's returning to something or starting something new, figure out who the players are in that industry and write an email that's such a light lift. And maybe you hear back from 50% or 20% or 90%. You don't know. All that feedback's great. And I would be seriously unafraid to do that.
Yeah.
It changed everything for us. And I tell it to the girls all the time. And I tell it to women I speak with all the time as well. There are networks out there to be had. And everyone has some advice to give you.
It takes away the fear too. You're doing it so many times that after a while, like we said, it's like, okay, like this is normal. I'm just going to do this. And that you take away that anxiety of like, well, what if they don't write back? Okay. Well, the 10 others didn't write back either. And I survived but 3 did, and they were amazing. So let me see if I get a 4th. And
the silence might not mean that they're not responding. It might mean that they flipped it to someone else who's better able to respond.
Yeah.
It might not be their space, but they might know the perfect person.
Yeah.
So, throw that stuff out into the universe, trust that it's going to land somewhere good, and just keep doing it. That has proved valuable to me again and again. And we're 8 years old, and it is still something I will do if the girls have asked to go someplace or I see a mentor that I need personally.
Yeah.
I might be 8 years in this space, but there are people in this space, who have been in it twice as long. And mentors need mentors. Yeah. So I am constantly reaching out and asking for advice.
What do you have to say to somebody who suffers with imposter syndrome?
Nobody else knows what your skills are. Nobody else knows what you were going to say. If you're nervous about getting up and giving a presentation, nobody but you knows what's in that script. So if you change the words around, if you forget a point and you go back to it later, if you're out of order with your slides, nobody knows what it was supposed to be but you. Mm-hmm. So your harshest judge is from within. Get your point across. The second thing I would say is very little of it is about us. When you are looking at an audience or you're looking at a boardroom or anything else, they want the information you have. Very little of what they're thinking about is directed at you. So give them the information. You are there to share the information or further a cause or sell a product or move a project down the line. It's not about us. Mm-hmm. It's about whatever audience or community we are serving or working with. And that's always really helped me. I'm not asking for me. I'm asking for these girls.
Yeah.
What I have to say is not about me. I'm asking on behalf of somebody else.
Right. This isn't a shot to my ego.
Right.
Like if this doesn't work, it's just, okay, maybe this isn't the product for them or the service for them. Yeah.
Yep. But also
Casey and I
people have no idea how strong you are.
Casey and I have talked before and how almost like imposter syndrome isn't necessarily a bad thing because it kind of humanizes you or, you know, she's saying like, if you're out there with this enormous ego, there's probably a little bit more to your personality that people don't like or isn't the best to have. And that imposter syndrome kind of keeps you grounded in some way. I also just think like the biggest thing to reiterate is it's so much more normal than you think. I mean, you just said there was an experience with Arianna Huffington. I had one with like one of the #1 podcasters in the world. I think that if you don't get imposter syndrome, then you're not doing something big enough and you need to make your dreams a little bit bigger.
Such a good point.
I think it needs to just be, I don't want to say normalized, but kind of like that's the, what they say, like the ticket to entry or like that's part of the welcome package to like doing something big in your life is feeling like, oh my gosh, I don't belong here. But then that's where like the real amazing stuff is made or the amazing experiences happen.
And we have a choice of how to think about it, right? It can be a trap. The imposter syndrome can be a trap, or it can be a springboard, like you were saying, to the next thing, to the bigger thing. If you ever feel, or you feel continuously like you are the smartest person in the room, odds are good you're in the wrong room.
You're in the wrong room.
Because you really do want to be in a room where you're learning all the time. And I think imposter syndrome is going to go hand in hand with that. But I love what you said, right? That's a ticket to something bigger. And so take the ticket.
Motherhood advice. We always love to ask people what their favorite was. You had given us something that your mother and grandmother instilled in you, in that you needed to feel like anything was possible in order to survive motherhood. Can you give me some kind of example of like how that's kind of parlayed into what you're doing with your business now?
Oh, that's a good question. Yes. So my grandmother was a lawyer when women were not lawyers.
Wow.
My
good
mother,
for her.
Yeah, in 1936. And then my mother actually went to law school in her 50s when I was in my third year of law school.
Cool.
So, you know, one went very early, one went much later. Both of them.
Can we sit on that for a second? I absolutely love that because I think what I certainly feel is like, oh shoot, did I miss so many boats back then, in my early 20s that I'm stuck where I am now? And it's like, no, you can reinvent yourself and you can do these things. And I'm not going to say it correctly, but there's this quote about like some artists that didn't do their first big piece until they were 50. Like, who is it? Morgan Freeman didn't get his first role until he was like 60. Like whatever it is, like all these people that you know now are super successful didn't start until way later than you think. So kudos to your mom. I absolutely love that. Love that.
It was amazing. And no, nobody misses a window. In fact, I would say very often we are better able to sail that boat you're talking about when we're older and we have more perspective.
Yes.
She got so much out of law school. She was not scared at all. I think professors were scared of her, to be honest. So both of those women, though, instilled in me the idea that you can be anything. I will say my mom tempered it, though, with a little realism to say, you can be anything and everything, but maybe not all at the same time. There are times where you need to put something down and then pick it up later. Yeah. And that is fully okay. And I have some friends who never did that. They did everything all at once. I needed to put something down and then pick it back up again. And both really worked for everybody. So I think that is good advice. And however you think about the order of your priorities, or maybe your path was linear and now it looks more like a jungle gym in the very literal sense that it's moving all over the place. I don't think there's a wrong answer to be had. I think do what's in front of you, do it to the absolute best of your ability, and rely on everyone else in the playground to help you. Yeah. You know, that's, again, I just really think that community. There
is no rule book. Like you have the power to create your own that works for you as long as it works, and anything is possible. I want to kind of close out here and talking about, you had mentioned the TED Ed event that you're having. I love that. I think that public speaking is so important and so powerful. Yes. And I try to encourage my daughter, even just the simple things of like, okay, like what kind of ice cream do you want? And she gets up to the counter. I would like chocolate with rainbow sprinkles, please. And I also would like a little spoon, and I would like a second one for my little brother, Asher. He's a baby, but he still likes ice cream. I think it's important to encourage that kind of interaction, because something as basic as that can then start to build upon itself. The next thing you know, maybe she's at the stage at her little school play or something, but she's been, conditioned to it. Just give us a little bit about this event. And is it something that we can watch? Like, do you put the videos out on YouTube? Because I think that's a great thing. Like you had mentioned, like ladies that are listening, sit your daughters down in front of this and have them watch these girls that are their age doing these awesome events.
Yes. So this is our first live event. If you go to our website, which is ETRE Girls, I should have said at the outset, I named the company Être because in French it means to be.
Nice.
And I love the idea of asking girls who they want to be. So ETREgirls.com, and under Be Involved, you can find our TED Ed page. This is our 4th year of being a licensed TED Ed club. We started during COVID for the girls in high school who all of a sudden were applying to college and didn't have that sports season, that spring musical. TED Ed gave them a place to step up to the mic and tell colleges who they were.
Yeah.
But it's been virtual so far. We've taped them at home and had our editor put them into TED form. This year, we're offering girls the choice. So we've got 40 girls across 7 countries doing TED Ed talks. It will be live in New York on October 20th.
How amazing.
And there will be a link on our website where you can register to either come see it live at the theater on 52nd Street, or we are live streaming the event as well.
Amazing.
And so you'll see girls, again, as young as 10 years old, all the way up, giving talks on, gender equality, saving the environment, Olympic sports, STEM, finance, advertising, whatever the topics that are closest to their hearts, they are giving talks. And for any moms who are listening, this can be done in really bite-sized pieces. We have so many girls this year that the talks are really short, 4 to 5 minutes. What you'll see on the website, some of them have been longer, but we work with the girls one-on-one. They meet each other in the class. It's all online. You can be in the meetings with them when we're Zooming. They rehearse with me, and you will be stunned and awed when you see these girls, young, 5th, 6th, 7th grade, standing at the mic, giving a talk on something that moved them, a topic they chose, and we pair each girl with a mentor.
Yeah.
So girls who have written about conservation have been mentored by women at the Jane Goodall Institute. We have a girl who is 11 years old this year writing a topic about can changing DNA change your personality?
Oh my gosh.
And a Nobel laureate for the first time is mentoring her, the woman who won the Nobel in chemistry.
Wow.
So we team them up with amazing women who advise their talks and give them a little depth and gravitas.
Oh, I'm getting Sienna involved immediately. Casey's unborn child needs to be signed up immediately. Every girl needs to be a part of it. This is amazing
for all of them.
It's absolutely amazing what you do. And like everybody needs to know about this. Again, exposure. I'm so happy to have you on the show to let our audience know about it so that they can get their kids involved. But also I think like a good note to end on here is that the things that we talked about today aren't super heavy lifts. Like you said, like it's really small steps that can be taken for you and for your children to instill a bigger sense of confidence. And I know as moms, there is so much that we have to do on a daily basis, whether it's with that toddler or whether you said it in that consultation phase that you are with your children who are in law school and med school, and you're still constantly worried about them. So it doesn't need to be a huge lift on your end to just even start thinking about this. Maybe start putting the Être and the TED Ed in front of your kids, or start thinking about yourself differently and start thinking about the position that you're in your career and where you want to go or who you want to be in this world, and that you can start over and know that you have it within you to be whoever you want to be, as we heard here first from Illana Raia. Thank you so much for being here. Tell us where people can find you if they want to connect with you, if they want to cold DM you or cold email you,
100%,
which they absolutely should. Yes.
They should. And I will welcome it. And I'll be so happy that we met here.
Yes.
I love what you guys do. I think nothing that I did would have started without a mom network. And so I love so much the community that you have built. and this robust way that women interact and connect through your organization. I just love it so much.
Thank you.
You can find us at etragirls.com or anywhere on social media at etragirls. You can DM me directly. It's Illana Raia. It's spelled Illana Raia. And I'm here. I will answer. I'll be so excited to meet you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. So I've definitely been in my feels lately, and it makes me really happy that I have a therapist that I know and love and trust, because I just can't imagine going through life without a therapist at this point. You actually had me laughing so hard, Casey. I was listening to one of our episodes and you reference your therapy.
Therapy, it's the plural of therapist. I made it up and it sticks. So I have 3 currently.
Yeah, I mean, there's no shame in our game. We think that therapy and mental health services are so important. So grateful that BetterHelp is a sponsor of the show. We want to make sure that you and our audience has access to it as well. All you have to do is go to betterhelp.com/motherup, and you can get access to licensed therapists who are trained to listen and give you that helpful, unbiased advice. I mean, I know that you have us, but unfortunately we can't directly talk to you through the podcast, but you go to their site, you answer a few questions, and they match you to somebody who has years of experience, who is helping people just like you in a way that fits you. So whether it's somebody that is faith-based, or if you prefer a certain gender, I mean, they really get specific in how they can select a therapist for you. You do it all from your phone or computer, video calls, phone calls, messaging,
and
however you feel
demand.
the most comfortable. You'll be matched with somebody usually within 48 hours, so you can get started fast for those issues that really just can't wait. So thank you to our sponsor, BetterHelp. Let them connect you to a therapist who could support you, all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/motherup and enjoy a discount of 10% off of your first month on us.